Hello, everyone. Before we discuss this week's module, you should note that last week I posted a midterm survey in the Module 7 materials to receive your feedback on our course. While end of the semester evaluations are useful, these are even better because we can take your suggestions and implement them now. So for example, a lot of you recommended that we push our due dates back to 11:59. And we implemented that now, and it seems to be working really well. Also note that I've designed this survey so that your name is not attached to the responses. That way you can feel free to speak your mind and you don't have to worry about anyone equating your name with your comments. You have until the end of March to take this survey. So that means that if you want to give me some feedback, you better do it this week. All right, now let's get into the major business at hand, or the main business at hand for the week. We are studying the second of our 8 diversity issues, and that issue is ethnicity. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the relationships between ethnicity and design. Now, in this wonderful background of my very cluttered office, you probably can see a few things that will give you some clues about my ethnicity. My guess is that in your world, you also have these clues that are embedded in your environment. And it's just good to take a look at them now and then and think about what they mean in terms of your background and your heritage. Ethnicity focuses on similarities between people, such as common language, homeland, customs, religion, and cultural heritage. It can be based on shared social experiences, such as eating, dancing, and dressing. Ethnicity often is an inherited status that's based on the society in which one lives or has come from. It follows then that the design of our environments, cannot help but have ethnic content. So let's use Buffalo as our example. How are the Irish neighborhoods different from the Polish neighborhoods, different from the Vietnamese neighborhoods, different from the Lebanese neighborhoods, different from the Somali neighborhoods, different from the African-American neighborhoods? Each of these places has a special character that reflects the ethnicities of the residents. One of the complex issues here is how to determine the right balance between keeping ethnic character and encouraging diversity in our environments. Now, in terms of the materials this week, we start with a general background on ethnicity itself. We have 3 videos. The first 2 explain the difference between race and ethnicity. The first one, which is very short, is a more up-to-date synopsis of the difference between these 2 terms. The other video, while not that old, actually uses terminology that is outdated. And so I felt that it was important to at least have one video with updated terminology. The reason I kept that other video in the mix is that it very clearly talks about the levels of oppression that some ethnicities experience, some ethnic people. Let me back up here just for a second. That video talks about the levels of oppression experienced by various ethnic groups throughout the world. And especially given what we're dealing with today in terms of the war in Ukraine, I think it's very important for us to take in some of this general information about the oppression of ethnic groups. Then the third video gives a very quick overview of the way that the US grew from 1850 onward. It's really fascinating to see how the immigration patterns have been set up and how they've changed. Then after those 3 videos, we'll move on to the readings. The first article is on ethnicity and communication design. The author contrasts early ethnic marketing, which attempted to sell Americanized products to recent arrivals, with the post-1960 emphasis on differences. So you'll see that eventually marketers wanted to use ethnicity as a way of selling their products. The second piece addresses ethnicity and landscape design. The authors discuss how 3 underrepresented ethnic communities are revealed through the landscape in the Central Valley of California. In addition, and I think this is really an important addition, they discuss the methodologies that landscape architects use to go about uncovering these histories. And I think that all of us can take note of these methodologies and use them ourselves in our own work. And then finally, we're going to be taking a look at how design is speaking to the ethnic pride of the Ukrainian communities throughout the world during this time of war. If you were moving on into the supplemental materials, you'll see 2 interesting pieces. The first reading tells the story of 2 Japanese American architects who were assigned the task of designing internment camps for Japanese Americans during World War II. What an ethical dilemma. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine designing the prisons for your own people? I have no words. The second article discusses cultural appropriation, an ethical issue for designers as well. And given that there are so many blended cultures in the US, it is inevitable that much of our design world involves cultural appropriation. The big question here, though, is when and in what context is a cultural appropriation appropriate? And is it ever appropriate? Of course, then you will take the quiz and participate in our weekly discussion group. And if you need a break, you can check out the Something Interesting category. There's a part 1 and a part 2 this week. The part 1 is particularly interesting because it talks about the way that we have defined race in the US census throughout history. And it's really interesting to see the various groups that were considered to be a race when the census was first taken versus the way that races are categorized today. It's worth taking a peek at this. Then also, this is important to note, I'll send you an email as well. We posted project 2 so that you can get a good sense of it well before it is due. It's due at the end of the semester. So then, just in general for this week, think about the physical environment that you've experienced in your lifetime. Where do you see traces of ethnicity? What is your attitude about these traces? Do you think these ethnic characteristics are perhaps kitschy or traditional, nostalgic, exotic, beautiful, well-crafted, charming? Your attitudes and those of other young people, thought about as a collective, can determine whether these elements of ethnicity stay or go. All right, that's it. Have a good week. I hope those little buds survived this cold spell that we've recently had. Stay safe, stay kind, and stay creative. Bye-bye.